Hello, family. Enjoy this relaxing moment with Surly Tales. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. It means the world to us. Also, share this video with your friends and loved ones, and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. Fatima Adami stood on the balcony of her penthouse overlooking the bustling heart of Lagos, Nigeria. The late afternoon sun cast gilded rays on the lagoon, illuminating the jostling water taxis and speedboats as they dashed across the surface. The city's skyline, dotted with high-rises and cranes, whispered promises of unending opportunity. It was a modern African metropolis, a place that could break or make fortunes in the blink of an eye. Fatima had always been drawn to the kinetic energy of Lagos, its capacity to transform lives, and she had built her career by harnessing that energy into prosperous ventures. She was a formidable entrepreneur, known throughout West Africa for her savvy investments and indomitable spirit. Yet, despite her success, there was a loneliness growing inside her like a silent shadow. Married for just 5 years to a man she'd believed to be her soulmate, she could now sense distance forming between them, an unspoken tension that she tried to ignore but couldn't fully dismiss. Her husband, Jidenna Adeyemi, was a charismatic lawyer turned politician. He had a voice that could charm an entire stadium and a smile that could launch business deals worth millions. It was precisely that charm that had attracted Fatima in the first place. She remembered their wedding day vividly, a lavish ceremony in an exclusive oceanfront resort, draped in Ankara fabrics with touches of gold, an embodiment of both modern African elegance and a nod to their shared Yoruba heritage. On the surface, the Adeyemi household seemed picture-perfect. She was a titan of industry, he was a rising star in the public sphere, and they lived in a luxurious penthouse that boasted marble floors imported from Italy, ornate African-inspired sculptures, and panoramic views of the city's iconic Third Mainland Bridge. Their social circle included influential politicians, star musicians, and entrepreneurs who shaped the economic landscape of not just Lagos, but the continent at large. The tabloids followed their every move, celebrating their philanthropic donations to local schools, praising Fatima's mentorship programs for young women in tech, and highlighting Jidenna's campaign to promote youth leadership. But for the past few months, Fatima had noticed subtle changes in her husband. He started spending more nights out, explaining them away as urgent political meetings or impromptu charitable events. He became more secretive with his phone, tilting the screen away from her whenever a message arrived. Initially, Fatima had brushed off the red flags. She told herself she was being paranoid, that the mounting pressure of her business expansions made her overly sensitive. Yet the ache in her chest wouldn't let her fully rest. Her instincts were rarely wrong. They had guided her to business success, after all, and she was no stranger to reading unspoken signals. The final straw came one evening when Jidenna returned unusually late. He smelled faintly of perfume, flowery and bold, not at all like the subtle fragrance Fatima wore. He mumbled a half-hearted apology about an urgent party meeting in Victoria Island and headed straight to bed. Fatima had stood in the living room for a long time, letting the darkness wrap itself around her shoulders. She understood enough about politics to know networking events could spring up, but the odd smell, his guilty expression, the tension in his movements, every detail confirmed her growing suspicions. Days passed, and the gap between them widened. Jidenna distracted himself with phone calls and messages that made him break into a secretive grin. Fatima tried to summon her usual composure, though she found it increasingly hard to share a bedroom with a man who was mentally miles away. In a last-ditch attempt to save what she believed was a sacred union, she suggested a weekend getaway to a newly opened resort in Obudu, hoping that some alone time would rekindle their bond. He declined, citing a conference in Abuja. She said nothing, even though his eyes betrayed him as he told the lie. Unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, Fatima confided in her closest friend, Ayamide, a brilliant software developer who had stood by her side since their university days. Over dinner at a trendy fusion restaurant in Ikoyi, Fatima laid out her fears and doubts. The restaurant had an open terrace, and the duo watched the glittering skyline, the air filled with the aroma of jollof rice and freshly grilled fish. Ayamide, ever the practical one, placed her hand on Fatima's and said, "You need to find proof. You're not one to jump to conclusions. Get the facts and then decide." With that, Fatima decided to investigate quietly. She wasn't one for confrontation without evidence, and part of her still hoped it was all a misunderstanding. Jidenna, for his part, remained seemingly oblivious to her worries. In his public life, he championed moral values, appearing on talk shows to discuss youth empowerment and the need for transparency in leadership. He was lauded as a modern African figure of progress, yet behind the scenes he seemed to be carrying on a secret life. Fatima discreetly reached out to a trusted contact in one of her business circles, a private investigator who had helped her vet major business deals and potential partners. If Jidenna truly was seeing someone else, this investigator would know how to trace phone calls, track credit card usage, and discreetly document a subject's movements. Fatima hated taking such a drastic step, but she also couldn't ignore the heartbreak that threatened to consume her. In the modern African business environment she navigated daily, it was second nature to gather facts first and then strategize accordingly. This was no different, even if it was her personal life. In the midst of her internal turmoil, an opportunity arose, one that would change the course of her marriage forever. A brand new luxury hotel was up for sale, rumored to be a hidden jewel in the city's hospitality scene. Business insiders whispered about its potential for unmatched profitability, touting its prime location by the lagoon and the innovative architectural design that fused contemporary African motifs with global standards of luxury. Fatima had initially considered investing. After all, real estate and hospitality were areas she longed to expand into. But now, a more personal plan started to form in her mind. The seeds were sown, and soon they would blossom into a carefully orchestrated revelation, one that would test her resolve, her love, and her capacity for retribution. She would not confront Jidenna directly, not yet. No, Fatima needed him to confirm her suspicions, and she wanted to be prepared with a strategy that would leave him no room to dismiss the evidence. Little did she know that her tangled emotions and this opportunity would merge into a plan that would reshape not just her marriage, but also her future. There was a storm brewing, and Lagos, vibrant and restless, would be the perfect backdrop for the coming drama, one that would merge heartbreak, ambition, and the surprising twists that only a city of boundless possibilities could provide. Fatima felt her heart lurch the moment she read the investigator's text. "He has booked a room at La Luna Suites. We'll keep you posted on arrival details." She had heard of La Luna Suites, a new luxury hotel that had recently opened with much pomp in the swanky part of Victoria Island, Lagos. In business circles, it was labeled the next big thing in African hospitality, a place where the who's who gathered for high-stakes deals and exclusive soirees. The building itself was a modern architectural marvel, a sweeping glass facade adorned with geometric accents inspired by Yoruba motifs. Luxury cars peppered its wide driveway, while paparazzi lingered outside, hoping to snag photos of celebrities. As her SUV idled in the characteristic Lagos traffic, Fatima felt a whirl of emotions surge through her. This was it, confirmation that Jidenna, her husband, was actively reserving a suite for himself and, presumably, a mistress. She looked out of the tinted window, the congested roads reflecting her internal turmoil. Outside, hawkers maneuvered between vehicles, offering phone chargers, handkerchiefs, even hardcover books, each trying to make a living. Fatima briefly remembered when she and Jidenna used to go on philanthropic drives, distributing care packages to street vendors during holidays. Those days felt distant, overshadowed by whatever duplicity was unfolding now. She scrolled through her phone again. Her inbox contained emails from prospective investors, updates on her numerous startups, and newsletters from philanthropic organizations she supported. Yet she could hardly focus. All she wanted was to know how deeply Jidenna was entangled in his deceit. Was it just one woman, or multiple women? Was this a fling or something more serious? And above all, what was she going to do about it? By the time her chauffeur pulled up at the sleek high-rise that housed her corporate headquarters, Fatima felt composed enough to face the day's meetings. But her mind buzzed with thoughts of La Luna Suites. She stepped out, greeted the doorman with a polite nod, and crossed the gleaming lobby filled with glass art installations by a renowned Nigerian artist. Business associates and guests often marveled at the modern African aesthetic she had cultivated in her office building, earthy tones, carefully chosen sculptures, and glass walls that allowed sunlight to flood in. People called it a reflection of her vision, forward-thinking, global, yet deeply rooted in African identity. Once in her private office, she locked the door and called the investigator. The man's voice was steady, professional, and devoid of judgment, exactly what she needed. Jidenna is scheduled to arrive at La Luna Suites tomorrow evening around 8 p.m., he informed her. He's booked the presidential suite, the second highest category of rooms. That's interesting, she said quietly, her fingertips lightly tapping the surface of her glass desk. Make sure you keep eyes on who he's with. I want pictures, times, everything. She ended the call, her mind already churning with possibilities. The presidential suite was known for its opulence, rumored to include a private plunge pool, a personal butler service, and a stunning view of the Lagos Lagoon. That her husband would choose such a lavish setting for what she assumed would be an illicit rendezvous only deepened her hurt. Yet, beneath the sting of betrayal, she felt a cold, calculating sense of resolve. By late afternoon, she had wrapped up her major meetings, one with a Pan-African tech company looking for venture capital, and another with an agricultural startup aiming to revolutionize cassava processing in rural Nigeria. She left her office around 6 p.m. and asked her driver to take her to the outskirts of Victoria Island, near the Eco-Atlantic Development Area. There, the city's future was rising from reclaimed land, and real estate deals worth billions of naira were being struck daily. Fatima had a singular destination in mind, a discreet law office that specialized in high-value property transactions. She had scheduled an appointment with a senior partner, a woman named Mrs. Oten, who had once helped her purchase prime plots in Abuja. Word in the business community was that La Luna Suites, despite its flashy grand opening, was facing potential financial strain. The original investors had overextended themselves, and the property might be up for sale quietly, a secret known only to a small circle of insiders. Seated in a minimalist conference room, Fatima wasted no time. She explained her interest in acquiring the luxury hotel, given her upcoming expansion plans in hospitality. I need absolute discretion in this matter, she told the lawyer, who nodded knowingly. If I'm going to invest, I want a controlling stake. What she didn't reveal was her most urgent motive. Jidenna's betrayal had given her a personal reason to own that hotel. If he was going to conduct his affair in a high-end suite, she would at least have the upper hand, literally owning the space in which he and his mistress planned to meet. We'll do it your way, responded the lawyer, pushing a folder of documents toward Fatima. At present, the owners are open to negotiation. They've had offers, but none that meet their valuation. If you come in at a strong figure and show your track record, we can likely secure an exclusive deal. Fatima studied the documents. Page after page, they showed the hotel's financials, occupancy rates, operational costs, and future projections. On paper, it was a risky venture, still in its infancy, barely tested. But with her reputation and network, she believed she could turn it around. Moreover, she had the capital to stabilize the business, rebrand if necessary, and position it as the crown jewel of Lagos hospitality. She signed a non-disclosure agreement and arranged to begin due diligence. Within the next few days, she would have accountants and auditors confirm every detail, while she remained in the background, letting the lawyer handle negotiations. Her involvement would be kept secret, and the ultimate shareholding would be managed through one of her shell corporations. If her plan succeeded, she would officially own La Luna Suites without even showing her face publicly. When Fatima left the law office, the sun had set, giving way to neon lights that illuminated the upscale parts of Victoria Island. Street vendors with pop-up grills were cooking suya, the mouth-watering aroma mingling with the saltiness of the Atlantic breeze. The city had a different rhythm at night, part electric, part ominous. She wondered if Jidenna was with his mistress at that very moment, or if he was planning their rendezvous for the following evening. Her phone buzzed again. It was a short message from Jidenna himself, staying at a friend's place tonight. Early flight for a conference. Don't wait up. Fatima felt an odd detachment as she read it. The sting was still there, but her focus had shifted to the bigger plan. This was what she had trained herself to do in the world of business: remove emotion from strategy. Yet, this was no mere business transaction. This was her marriage at stake, her emotional world upended. As her driver navigated the busy roads back to their penthouse, she gazed at the reflection of the city lights on the car windows. Lagos glimmered, a vast tapestry of ambition and heartbreak, success and scandal, resilience and fleeting dreams. By the time she entered her penthouse, the living area was dark except for a single lamp she had left on. She set down her briefcase and walked to the panoramic window, staring at the shimmering lagoon. Tomorrow night, she thought. He'll be at La Luna Suites. I'll own it soon enough, and then, she paused, letting the weight of her plan settle in. She was no fool. This was a dangerous game. If Jidenna discovered her scheme prematurely, the fallout would be messy. Moreover, she had to balance public image. Both she and her husband were well-known personalities, and a scandal of this magnitude would ripple through Nigeria's tabloids for weeks, if not months. But beneath the whirlwind of worry, a fierce determination rose within her. If her husband wanted to break her trust, then she would seize every advantage her resources allowed. Fatima told herself she wasn't doing this for petty revenge, but for control of her life. If love was not to be the guiding force in their marriage, then she would ensure that she emerged from this betrayal with her dignity and security intact. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and in that moment, she felt both heartbreak and empowerment. When she finally drifted to sleep, her dreams were filled with images of glass towers, hidden cameras, signed contracts, and the flicker of a gold wedding band that threatened to slip off her finger. Her heart and mind were at war, but one thing was certain: her next steps would have to be bold, calculated, and unflinching. The following evening arrived in a flash. By 7 p.m., the sun was already dipping below the horizon, painting the Lagos sky in shades of orange and pink. Fatima waited in her SUV, parked discreetly across the street from La Luna Suites. Tinted windows shielded her from prying eyes, and she blended into the nocturnal rhythm of the city, a silent observer of the opulent hotel's entrance. La Luna Suites stood in all its gleaming glory, a towering ode to modern African luxury. Intricate patterns inspired by traditional Yoruba woodcarvings adorned the glass facade, catching the city lights in a mesmerizing dance of reflections. The doormen, dressed in sharply tailored suits accented with colorful Kent cloth sashes, welcomed guests with regal bows. A lineup of expensive cars edged forward one by one, dropping off patrons who exuded money, power, or fame, each stepping onto the marble-tiled driveway. Fatima's phone buzzed. The text from her private investigator read, "He just arrived. He's with a woman." Her pulse quickened. This was no longer a suspicion but a confirmation. She raised her eyes to the entrance just in time to see Jidenna's tall figure stepping out of a silver Mercedes. His face wore an air of confident satisfaction. He extended a hand to help a stunning young woman in a sequined dress exit the vehicle. The woman laughed, linking her arm through his as they walked inside. Fatima recognized that laugh even from a distance. Her investigator had sent her a video clip of the pair leaving a nightclub the previous week. This woman was not just a fling. It looked like something more consistent, more entrenched. Fatima's stomach clenched, and for a moment, she had to remind herself to breathe. "Stay calm," she whispered, wrapping her arms around her torso. "This is why you came." She summoned every bit of her business persona, the cool negotiator who refused to let emotions dictate her actions. Once they were out of sight, she signaled her driver. "We'll wait until the private investigator confirms which suite they're heading to. Then I need to go inside." Almost immediately, her phone vibrated again. "Presidential suite, 14th floor." That was all Fatima needed. She stepped out of the SUV, taking a moment to smooth down her elegant black dress. It was form-fitting yet conservative, a piece from a contemporary Nigerian designer who seamlessly blended Western cuts with African patterns in subtle lines. She took a deep breath of the warm Lagos air and headed toward the hotel's grand entrance. Inside, La Luna Suites was even more breathtaking. The lobby spread out in a circular layout, surrounded by floor-to-ceiling windows that provided a panoramic view of the city's skyline and lagoon. Water features trickled softly, and the scent of freshly cut flowers mingled with the distant aroma of spiced Nigerian delicacies from the in-house restaurant. Rich, earthy colors dominated the decor, deep browns, gold accents, and vibrant reds, creating a space that felt simultaneously grand and welcoming. She approached the front desk, maintaining her composure. The receptionist, a poised young woman in a stylish uniform patterned with ankara trim, greeted her with a warm smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Welcome to La Luna Suites. How may I assist you?" Fatima returned the smile. She knew her name alone could garner attention, but she was not yet the official owner. She opted for discretion. "Good evening," she said softly. "I'd like to speak with the hotel's general manager. Could you please let them know Fatima Adami is here for a quick visit?" The receptionist nodded, her eyes momentarily lighting up in recognition of the name. Fatima's entrepreneurial achievements had not gone unnoticed. "Of course, Mrs. Adami. Please have a seat in the lounge, and I'll inform Mr. Balogun right away." Fatima made her way to the plush lounge area. She noticed that despite its modern aesthetic, the space was dotted with artwork from various Nigerian artists, wooden masks from the Igbo region, paintings portraying the hustle of Lagos streets, and sculptures reminiscent of Benin bronzes. Beautiful indeed. She could already envision the potential if she took ownership: themed suites celebrating different African cultures, curated culinary experiences that showcased regional flavors, and exclusive business lounges that capitalized on Lagos's status as a financial hub. A man approached, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. "Good evening, Mrs. Adami," he said, offering a respectful bow. "I'm Tund Balogun, the general manager. It's an honor to have you here." They shook hands, and Fatima noted the hint of excitement and curiosity in the man's eyes. "I'm sorry for the unannounced visit, but I was in the area and decided to drop by. If it's not too much trouble, I'd love to see one of your top suites. I hear they're magnificent, and I'm in the market to host some international clients soon." His face lit up. "Absolutely. We'd be delighted to show you around. Let me just confirm availability." While he clicked away on a tablet, Fatima's gaze drifted toward the elevator bank. She pictured Jidenna and that woman riding up to the 14th floor, oblivious that she was here. The thought gave her a pang of both pain and determination. "Right this way, Mrs. Adami," Tun said, guiding her to a private elevator reserved for VIPs. "We have our Grand Royal Suite available for viewing. It's slightly larger than the presidential, but this way you can see the best of what we offer." Fatima followed, maintaining her poised facade. Inside the elevator, soft music played, an upbeat, jazzy rendition of a popular Nigerian highlife tune. Tund tapped a security keycard, and the elevator ascended swiftly. Her heart pounded as the floors ticked by, knowing Jidenna was just a few levels above. The doors opened to reveal a long corridor lined with framed black and white photographs of famous African landmarks: the pyramids of Egypt, the Masai Mara Plains, Victoria Falls, and of course, the bustling skyline of Lagos. Plush carpeting absorbed the sounds of their footsteps. Tund led her to a pair of ornate double doors, which he unlocked with the same keycard. The suite took her breath away. A spacious living room with floor-to-ceiling windows offered an unobstructed view of the lagoon at night, its waters shimmering like molten obsidian. The decor was a tasteful blend of modern furnishings and subtle tribal prints. An expansive terrace showcased a small infinity pool under the stars. Everything spoke of elegance and comfort, a far cry from the noisy chaos of Lagos streets below. As Tund enthusiastically described the suite's amenities: state-of-the-art entertainment system, dedicated butler service, a chef's kitchen, Fatima took note of every detail. She asked questions, feigning interest on behalf of her international clients, all the while picturing the day she could stand here as the new owner, finalizing improvements and expansions. After the tour, Tund walked her back to the elevator. "If you need any further assistance, do let me know. We pride ourselves on customizing experiences for our guests," he said with a courteous nod. Fatima smiled, stepping into the elevator. "Thank you, Mr. Balogun. I'm quite impressed, and I look forward to future collaborations." As she rode down, the weight of what she'd just seen, coupled with the knowledge that Jidenna was upstairs, pressed heavily on her. The elevator reached the lobby, and she glided out, head held high. She made a beeline for the exit, but stopped short of actually leaving. Instead, she circled around to a tucked-away corridor near the conference halls. She pulled out her phone, texting her investigator to confirm the suite number once more. The answer came immediately: presidential suite, 14th floor, end of the hallway. For a moment, she considered marching up there and confronting them both, exploding the situation into a dramatic showdown. But then she remembered the bigger plan. This was no time for hot-blooded theatrics. She had already put into motion the purchase of La Luna Suites. Soon enough, she wouldn't just be an outsider looking in, she would be the hidden orchestrator behind every room key, every security camera, every staff directive. That thought gave her a sense of power she hadn't felt since first suspecting Jidenna. This was a precarious game, but the stakes were hers to define. Quietly, she made her way back through the lobby, offering a polite nod to the doorman as she left. Outside, the night air was thick with humidity, and the lights of the city sparkled with an almost mocking brilliance. Once seated in her SUV, she stared at the facade of La Luna Suites for a few final seconds. Then she ordered her driver to take her home. In her mind's eye, she replayed Jidenna's arrival, the confident grin on his face, the woman's sequin dress catching the lobby's golden lights. With every image, her resolve solidified. Soon, she promised herself, it would all be under her control. Love might have failed her, but business acumen was her sword and shield. She typed one final text to her lawyer before setting her phone aside: "Let's move faster on the acquisition." By the time the first official meeting concerning the acquisition of La Luna Suites took place, Fatima had become a master of emotional compartmentalization. She glided through conference rooms and video calls like a seasoned chess player, keeping her heartbreak tucked away behind a veneer of polite smiles and decisive strategies. Her lawyer, Mrs. Oten, had arranged a discreet session in a private office building that Fatima owned, away from the prying eyes of the media or business competitors. The room's atmosphere was one of hushed expectancy. Legal documents lay in neat stacks, and laptops were open to spreadsheets detailing the hotel's finances, tax records, and projections. Across from Fatima sat the hotel's current majority stakeholders, a pair of middle-aged business partners, one Ghanaian and the other Nigerian, whose combined capital had built La Luna Suites to its present grandeur. Despite their outward composure, Fatima sensed their desperation. They were likely drowning in debt or pressured by other failing ventures. Their willingness to sell suggested a precarious situation. "Let's discuss the terms," Fatima began calmly. "I see here that La Luna Suites needs a fresh injection of funds to cover operating costs for the next 6 months. I'm prepared to infuse the necessary capital in exchange for a controlling share, 51% to start, with an option to increase to 70% if certain performance targets aren't met in the next year." The men exchanged tense glances, and the Ghanaian partner, Mr. Mensah, cleared his throat. "Yes, the numbers do suggest we need a cash boost, but 51% is a steep demand. We were hoping to retain at least an equal partnership." Fatima offered a polite, businesslike smile. "Gentlemen, let's be realistic. The brand is new, untested in the long run, and while the location is prime, the hotel's marketing has not fully capitalized on Lagos's international tourism potential. I'm bringing not just money, but my extensive network, expertise, and reputation. That is what will stabilize and elevate La Luna Suites. So, 51% is the baseline. It's non-negotiable." She watched their expressions carefully. They were trapped between pride and necessity, and she was acutely aware of her advantage. After a few moments of whispered consultation, the Nigerian partner, Mr. Ajayi, nodded grimly. "We understand your position, but we have a counterproposal for the second part. 70% is too high. We'd like to cap your maximum ownership at 65%, should the performance targets not be met." Fatima paused, creating an air of deliberation even though she'd already decided on a mental range she would accept. "I can agree to that," she finally said, making a note on the draft contract. "Anything else?" The men exchanged glances again, And this time it was Mr. Mensah who spoke. "There's one more condition. We'd like a seat on the new board of directors for each of us. We want to remain involved, at least in some capacity, to ensure our vision for the hotel endures." Fatima tapped her pen lightly against the table. She had no real objection to their involvement, as long as she held the controlling share. In truth, having the original owners on board would simplify matters: fewer PR hurdles, smoother administrative transition, and retained knowledge of the hotel's operations. "That's acceptable," she said. "2 board seats, but I'll appoint the chairman and hold the final say on any major operational changes." A sigh of relief escaped from both men. The negotiations had found a middle ground, and the tension in the room seemed to ease. The lawyers went to work, finalizing the language. Fatima's mind drifted for a moment, imagining Jidenna's reaction when he discovered that his secret playground was now under her control. A pang of sorrow mingled with grim satisfaction. She despised the necessity of such subterfuge, but each day he continued his affair made her more resolute. Once the meeting adjourned and the parties dispersed, Fatima stepped into her private office within the same building. She took a moment to compose herself, leaning against the large mahogany desk that dominated the room. Sunlight streamed through the glass windows, illuminating a panoramic view of Lagos's frenetic skyline. Her phone buzzed. Another update from the private investigator, detailing Jidenna's recent outings: lunch at a fusion restaurant in Lekki with the same mistress, drinks at a rooftop lounge in Ikoyi afterward. Their overt boldness infuriated her. She forced herself to exhale slowly, counting to 10. Her personal heartbreak had to take second place to her professional composure. She reminded herself that once the sale closed, she would have a wealth of surveillance options at her fingertips: security cameras, staff logs, and electronic key records. Jidenna wouldn't be able to set foot in the hotel without her knowing. That afternoon, she went home to the penthouse, where she found Jidenna typing away on his laptop at the dining table. He barely looked up when she entered. "Busy day?" she asked softly, setting her purse down. He gave a non-committal grunt. "Yeah, some policy proposals to review. The governor's team wants my feedback." She nodded, trying to mask her disappointment in his detached demeanor. "I'll be in the study if you need anything." He didn't respond, and she retreated to the study, a room lined with bookshelves containing works on Nigerian history, global economics, and African literature. There, she quietly poured herself a glass of water and sank into a leather chair. She stared at the wedding photo on the desk, her and Jidenna, beaming under an arch of flowers, surrounded by family. It was a symbolic day of unity, promise, and love. Now, those vows felt painfully distant. Fatima closed her eyes, remembering the day Jidenna had surprised her by playing her favorite song from a local Yoruba band during their wedding reception. She remembered how they danced, hand in hand, with their relatives cheering in a circle around them. That moment felt timeless, like nothing could ever break their bond. Now it was shattered. She forced those memories aside and mentally tallied her next moves. 1. Finalize the acquisition contract within the week. 2. Keep the transaction private until all due diligence was complete. 3. Begin forming a new corporate structure to oversee La Luna Suites, one that would answer to her and her alone. By the time she emerged from the study, Jidenna had already slipped out, leaving a note that he had an evening engagement. She didn't bother to read the specifics. Instead, she focused on the plan that would secure her financial and emotional future. In the days that followed, she poured herself into the deal, orchestrating inspections, financial audits, and staff assessments. While she had a top-notch team to handle the minute details, she also conducted her own private checks. She visited the hotel at random times, speaking casually with front desk clerks, housekeeping staff, and security personnel. She wanted to gauge the morale, the work culture, and any underlying issues. On one such visit, she walked through the hotel's staff cafeteria, a modest space where employees ate quick meals. The chatter died down the moment she entered, likely due to her recognizable status. She offered a polite smile. "Don't let me disturb you, please continue," she said, moving toward the lunch line. The staff, initially shy, eventually warmed up. She engaged them in friendly small talk about the daily challenges they faced, lack of some supplies, high expectations from wealthy guests, sometimes erratic work schedules. Through these conversations, she gained invaluable insight. La Luna Suites was running on a skeleton staff, many of whom were overworked. Replacing a few senior managers who lacked empathy and organizational skills seemed essential. On her way out, she noticed a quiet young woman sitting alone, wearing the subdued uniform of a laundry attendant. Fatima approached her, concerned. "Are you all right?" The girl looked up, startled. "Yes, ma'am," she said softly. "Just tired. It's been a long day." Fatima reached into her bag and handed her a business card. "If there's anything you need, please let me know. I'm a friend of this hotel." She left, hoping to establish a culture of trust from the ground up. These were the intangible steps, human touches, that would set her ownership style apart. Nevertheless, amidst the flurry of business activity, the bitter reality of her marital situation remained an ever-present undercurrent. Jidenna's late nights became more frequent, his excuses more outlandish. The private investigator's reports formed a sobering chronicle of his indiscretions. Yet, Fatima held back, waiting for the right moment. She would not confront him until she was armed with both knowledge and power, a lethal combination that her entrepreneurial instincts had taught her to wield. As the deal moved closer to completion, she found herself standing on a precarious precipice. One more step, and she would own the stage of his betrayal. Whether this would liberate her or devastate her even more, she couldn't fully predict. But in a city like Lagos, where fortunes shifted as rapidly as traffic lights and alliances were as fragile as glass, control was her best currency. Love, at this point, felt like an exhausted resource, slipping through her fingers. And so, she pressed on, determined to shape her future on her own terms, even if it meant controlling the very ground on which her husband chose to betray her. The day of the final acquisition signing arrived like a curtain call in a grand play. Fatima dressed meticulously, choosing a charcoal gray pantsuit tailored to perfection by a rising Nigerian designer. It reflected both her modern African elegance and her authoritative stance as one of the continent's leading business figures. She observed herself in the mirror, noting the steely resolve in her own eyes. This was a moment she had orchestrated carefully, step by step, through heartbreak and cunning. She arrived at a downtown Lagos office tower, a neutral site for major deals, where the sellers, their lawyers, and her own legal team awaited. The meeting took place in a glass-walled conference room overlooking the teeming city below. From that vantage point, you could see the city's very essence, the weaving of cars along the roads, the hum of commerce in the markets, and the scattering of skyscrapers jostling for space. A solemn hush fell when Fatima entered. The documents were neatly laid out on the table. Everyone knew the stakes. She was about to become the majority owner of La Luna Suites, a bold move that would either elevate her business empire to new heights or serve as a cautionary tale of overreach. There was, however, one uninvited guest Fatima had orchestrated, a surprise she had carefully prepared. As the lawyers finalized the last pages, she motioned to her assistant, who slipped out of the room. Minutes later, the assistant reappeared with two additional people, the private investigator and a technology specialist. "Gentlemen," Fatima began, addressing the hotel's current owners and the lawyers, "before we conclude, I need to ensure that certain issues are recognized by all parties." The private investigator stepped forward, placing a slim folder on the table. "This contains recent security oversights at La Luna Suites," Fatima explained, flipping open the folder to reveal snapshots taken in the hotel corridors and certain guest records. "The hotel's security system is not as foolproof as you've claimed. My independent checks show vulnerabilities in the key card system and the camera coverage." She paused to let the men absorb the information. The next set of documents laid out a plan to revamp the security infrastructure, an additional investment that the current owners had not accounted for. While their faces showed concern, they understood that this was part of a real negotiation. "I'm prepared to handle these costs, but it means I'll need an even freer hand in managing day-to-day operations," Fatima stated. "We'll keep your board seats in name, but major operational decisions, especially concerning security, will be under my jurisdiction alone." The two partners exchanged anxious glances but saw no viable way to argue. They needed Fatima's capital and her business acumen to save the floundering hotel. So they acquiesced, nodding in agreement. With that, the final documents were signed, each signature marking a silent thunderclap that shook the foundation of what La Luna Suites had been, and what it was about to become under Fatima's control. A wave of mixed emotions washed over her as she set down her pen. Triumph, certainly, she had just taken a strategic leap in her career. But also an acute sense of sorrow, because she had done all this not just for profit, but as a reaction to her husband's betrayal. Even in victory, she felt that pang of heartbreak. Once the meeting concluded and the men filed out, she lingered with her legal team to discuss next steps. She instructed them to begin the rebranding process, outline the new security system, and set a timeline for staff restructuring. Her instructions were clear and methodical. She was in her element, all business. Finally, she stepped outside, letting the warm Lagos air touch her face. Cars honked and pedestrians hurried along the sidewalks. Life continued, oblivious to the personal drama fueling Fatima's ambitious moves. She took a moment to savor the magnitude of what she had accomplished. I own the hotel now. My husband's stomping ground is mine. That evening, she treated her loyal friend Ayamide to dinner at an upscale rooftop restaurant in Lekki. Ayamide had been her sounding board from the start, offering both emotional support and practical advice. The setting was breathtaking, candles flickered on every table, and a gentle sea breeze wafted the scent of freshly grilled seafood. As they clinked glasses of champagne, Ayamide looked at Fatima with a mixture of pride and concern. So it's done, huh? You're officially the boss of La Luna Suites, Ayamide said, taking a sip of her drink. Fatima nodded. Yes. Ownership documents are signed and sealed. In a few days, I'll start making staff announcements, visiting the premises officially. My name will eventually be public, but for now, I'm keeping it under wraps until I finalize some transitions. Ayamide raised an eyebrow. And Jidenna? Fatima paused, swirling the champagne in her glass. He's still clueless, she said, her voice tinged with a mixture of bitterness and amusement. He's been staying out more often. I haven't confronted him yet. But now, if he goes there with her, I'll know the moment they step into the lobby. Ayamide reached across the table to squeeze her hand. This must be tough, she said gently. Are you sure you want to keep going down this path? Maybe it's time you both sit and talk or what? Fatima interjected, her eyes flaring with both pain and defiance. I've tried talking. I suggested trips. I asked him openly what's wrong. He shuts me out every time, feeds me lies. No, I need to do this in my own way. I need the upper hand if I decide to end this marriage. Ayamide sighed, nodding sympathetically. I understand. Just know you can always count on me. They finished dinner, and Fatima left with an unspoken resolve burning in her chest. She had a plan, to wait until Jidenna inevitably returned to La Luna Suites with his mistress, catch him red-handed, and confront him on her terms. Back at the penthouse later that night, she found Jidenna on the phone in the living room, speaking in hushed tones. He cut the call abruptly when she entered. Working late, she asked casually, taking off her earrings. Yeah, something like that, he replied, his expression guarded. The tension between them crackled in the air. Fatima, choosing her battles carefully, merely shrugged and walked past him to the bedroom. As she undressed, she could hear him pacing in the living room, probably weighing whether to leave the apartment. Finally, she heard the door click shut. She was alone, again. Days rolled into a week. Fatima's ownership of La Luna Suites was still under the radar, but behind the scenes, changes were already in motion. She hired new security staff, replaced outdated cameras, and installed a digital system that logged every room access in real time. From her private office computer, she could view a live feed of the lobby, hallways, and even certain angles of the restaurant and bar areas. The system was state-of-the-art, a testament to how far African innovation had come in integrating modern tech solutions into local businesses. Each time she glanced at the live feed, she half expected to see Jidenna striding in with his paramour. But for now, he was either laying low or using another venue. Each passing day amped up her anticipation, her emotions coiled like a spring ready to unloose. Late one Friday evening, her phone buzzed with a short but electrifying text from her private investigator. They're on their way to La Luna Suites. Her heart jackhammered. She took her laptop, logged into the hotel's security system from her penthouse, and waited. Sure enough, a black SUV pulled up at the hotel entrance on the grainy live feed. Out stepped Jidenna, looking suave in a fitted blazer, and then his mistress, clad in a dress that sparkled under the lobby lights. Fatima's breath caught in her throat. Even though she had braced herself for this moment, the reality stung more than she could have imagined. From the vantage point of the security camera, she watched them check in at the front desk. Her newly installed system pinged an alert on her screen. Presidential suite booked. Keycard 1402 activated. A sense of unreality swept over her. This was no mere suspicion or second-hand rumor. The man she had married was brazenly booking the very same suite she had once considered sharing with him for a romantic getaway. Time seemed to slow as she watched them enter the elevator, the mistress leaning her head on Jidenna's shoulder. The feed switched to the elevator camera. Jidenna pressed the button for the 14th floor, and the doors slid shut. Her husband never looked more like a stranger to her than he did at that moment. Fatima sat back in her chair, eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. The next steps were clear in her mind. She had to go there, physically. Confront him in the citadel of her newly acquired empire. Let him see that she was no clueless, helpless wife. Tonight would be the unmasking of his game, and ironically, it would take place on the stage she now owned. Fatima sat back in her chair, eyes stinging with tears she refused to let fall. The next steps were clear in her mind. She had to go there, physically. Confront him in the citadel of her newly acquired empire. Let him see that she was no clueless, helpless wife. Tonight would be the unmasking of his game, and ironically, it would take place on the stage she now owned. She grabbed her car keys, tossed on a black trench coat over her business dress, and hurried out of the penthouse. Descending in the elevator, she felt her pulse pound with a mixture of fear, excitement, and heartbreak. The betrayal was real, but so was her power. She only prayed that when she stepped into that suite to face Jidenna, she would have the strength to do what needed to be done. Fatima's hands trembled slightly on the steering wheel as she navigated the Lagos streets toward La Luna Suites. It was nearly midnight, but the city was still alive, bars thrumming with music, street vendors grilling suya, and the unmistakable aromas of spices blending into the humid air. Despite the hive of nightlife around her, she felt acutely alone in this journey. She parked her sleek sedan in a secluded corner of the hotel's underground garage, where her newly issued owner's ID gave her direct access. Exiting the car, she took a moment to steady herself, breathing in deeply. A swirl of conflicting emotions stormed inside her: heartbreak at Jidenna's betrayal, anger at his brazen disregard, and an odd sense of resoluteness that had guided her through countless business deals. Tonight, though, this was personal in a way she had never experienced. When she stepped into the elevator, she swiped her owner's keycard, giving her unrestricted access to all floors. A security camera in the corner captured her image, but she knew that footage would never be released without her approval. The irony wasn't lost on her. Jidenna thought he was free to do as he pleased here, yet it was she who truly held the reins. Her heart pounded louder with each floor. She watched the red numbers illuminate until it reached 14. The doors slid open to a hushed corridor. Ambient lighting glowed along the walls, and plush carpet muted her footsteps. Far down the hallway, she glimpsed the sign, Presidential Suite 1402. She paused at the door, noticing the Do Not Disturb sign hanging from the handle. The final line in her plan of action had arrived. With a determined exhale, she slid her owner's keycard into the electronic lock. A soft beep, a green light, and the door clicked open. Stepping into the suite felt like intruding upon a scene that should never have been. The living area lights were dim, but enough to reveal scattered clothes, a telltale sign of urgency and passion. She heard muffled laughter from the bedroom, and her stomach twisted painfully. He really did this, she thought, in a space he thinks is safe from me. She steadied her resolve. This was her space now, not his. Not theirs. Hers. She tapped a discreet control panel near the entry, boosting the suite's main lights. Instantly, the living room was illuminated in warm, golden hues, revealing the modern African decor, bold patterned throw pillows, carved wooden accents, and a large glass coffee table. A startled gasp came from the direction of the bedroom. Moments later, Jidenna emerged, shirtless, confusion etched onto his face. Behind him, the woman peeked out, hurriedly clutching a robe around herself. The shock of seeing Fatima in the doorway froze them in place. What the? Fatima? Jidenna stammered, eyes wide as if he were witnessing a ghost. What are you doing here? Fatima held his gaze, her chest tight. I came to see my property, she said evenly. He blinked, still grappling with the reality unfolding in front of him. Your property? His voice betrayed a hint of nervous laughter. What are you talking about? Is this some sick joke? How did you even get in here? She stepped further into the suite, each stride a statement of ownership. I used my keycard. I own this hotel now, Jidenna. Every room, every corridor, every security camera feed. For a moment, his face was a portrait of disbelief. Then he glanced at the woman, who shifted uncomfortably behind him. Fatima followed his gaze. The mistress looked younger than she had realized, probably in her mid-20s, with carefully styled braids and high-end makeup. Fatima briefly noted the fear and confusion in the woman's eyes. Jidenna's voice cracked with anger. That's impossible. How why? He flung his arm in exasperation. And why are you here barging in on me like this? In that instant, Fatima felt a wave of sorrow crush her. Barging in on you? In a hotel suite you're sharing with your mistress, while I'm your wife. She swallowed hard, trying to keep her composure. I'm here because I needed to see it for myself, she said, keeping her tone steady. You betrayed me. You lied to me. And you had the audacity to do it in a place you believed was out of my reach? Jidenna's gaze darted from the woman to Fatima, a flicker of panic dancing in his eyes. This isn't what it looks like, he began, stumbling over his words. I can explain. Don't insult me, Fatima cut him off, her voice sharper than she intended. I've known for weeks. I have the receipts, the videos, the timestamps. I only waited until this hotel became mine. Now, there's no more hiding. At that, the mistress took a step forward, perhaps emboldened by anger or shame. I didn't know, he said you two were practically separated, she blurted, tears pooling in her eyes. I'm sorry, ma. I never. Fatima's anger flared, but she also felt a pang of empathy. She didn't know this woman, didn't know her story. Perhaps she was misled, or perhaps she was a willing participant. Either way, the real betrayal lay with Jidenna. She lifted her hand, gesturing for the mistress to stop. I'm not here to have a conversation with you. You're free to go. But let me be clear, from this moment on, you'll not be welcome in my hotel. If you ever set foot here again, I'll have security escort you out. The young woman nodded tearfully, grabbed her clothes from the couch, and disappeared into the bedroom to change. An awkward, tense silence descended, filled only by the hum of the suite's air conditioning. When she was gone, Fatima turned back to Jidenna. They stood a few feet apart, the suite's luxurious furniture forming a stage for their emotional battle. It didn't have to come to this, she said, her voice trembling. We could have talked, fought, tried counseling, anything. But you chose betrayal. He raked a hand over his face, struggling to find words. You're hardly around, he began weakly. You're always busy with business, expanding your empire. I felt neglected, like I wasn't your priority anymore. His words cut her, but she forced herself to remain strong. You never told me you felt neglected. You never gave me the chance to fix anything. Her voice cracked despite her resolve. Do you have any idea how often I waited for you at home? How many nights I begged you to come to bed early, only to find you stumbling in with lame excuses? He opened his mouth as if to protest but found no defense. Instead, he slumped onto a nearby armchair, covering his face with his hands. I messed up, he admitted in a near whisper. But you buying this hotel, setting all this up, you went to extremes, Fatima. She stared at him, tears finally breaking free and sliding down her cheeks. You think I wanted this? I'm an entrepreneur, Jidenna. I see an opportunity and I take it. But I never wanted that skill set to tear us apart. I only pursued this path because you forced my hand. He looked up at her, eyes brimming with regret. So, what now? The question hung in the air, weighty and final. She glanced around the suite. The city lights sparkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, a panoramic view of Lagos at night, a scene she once would have shared happily with the man she loved. Now, it felt hollow, a vantage point from which to survey the wreckage of their marriage. I don't know, she admitted, wiping away her tears. I need time to think. But as of now, I'm going to remove you from the premises. You can find another place to stay tonight. This suite is no longer available to you. He nodded, a defeated look in his eyes. I understand. But please, can we talk at home tomorrow? At least give me that chance. She hardened her gaze. I'll decide if there's anything left to say after I clear my head. He rose from the chair, gathered his belongings, and walked to the door. Before stepping out, he paused, turning to face her one last time. I'm sorry, he said, voice thick with emotion. For everything. Fatima stood silent, arms folded, tears still clinging to her lashes. She gave a small nod, not trusting her voice to hold steady. He left, and the door hissed shut behind him. For a long time, she remained there, staring at the closed door. An uneasy stillness enveloped the room, broken only by her shaky breaths. She wandered over to the window, pressing a hand against the cool glass. Below, Lagos was a living tapestry of headlights, street lamps, and neon signs. It's all mine out there, she thought with a bitter smile. Her businesses, her philanthropic ventures, her expanding real estate portfolio, and now this luxury hotel. Yet, in this moment, none of it felt like enough to mend her shattered heart. Eventually, she wandered through the suite, turning off lights, tidying the disarray of clothes left behind by two people who had used this space for pleasure. It struck her as ironic that she was cleaning up after her husband's affair in her own property. But maybe that was part of the closure she needed. A symbolic reclaiming of the room, a transformation of pain into something within her control. As she smoothed the duvet on the massive bed, she inhaled a shaky breath. Tomorrow might bring a conversation that would decide the fate of her marriage. She might choose reconciliation, if that was even possible, or she might walk away, forging a new future for herself. Either way, she knew one thing: she would never again be a victim of someone else's decisions. Stepping onto the suite's balcony, she gazed at the lagoon reflecting the moonlight like a polished mirror. In the distance, she could see the sprawl of the city that had given her so much wealth, status, opportunities, and also heartbreak. This is my story now, she told herself. However it ends, I'll shape it. She closed her eyes, letting the late-night breeze wash over her, carrying away the echoes of betrayal. Below her, the heartbeat of Lagos continued without pause. Above her, the African skies spread vast and star-flecked, as though urging her to look beyond her pain toward the infinite horizon of possibilities. And there, in the hush of midnight, standing on the balcony of the most luxurious suite in a hotel she secretly owned, Fatima breathed in the promise of a new dawn. A dawn she would meet on her own terms, regardless of whether Jidenna stood beside her or not. The end. If you enjoyed this story, we invite you to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support motivates us to keep bringing heartwarming stories almost every day. We are very grateful for your support. See you soon.